care about your date of birth. I know you're all old, but get your phone number on there at least, because communication today, most commonly, it's going to be a call or a text. With that being said, if anybody needs help getting signal onto their phone, if you'll get with Pierce or Ryan after service, they can help you, because I have a hard time navigating that, adding people. I've got it on my phone now so I can use it, but until you get it on your phone, it's kind of difficult unless somebody adds you. So if you want to be added to Signal, because that is the way that we're kind of communicating, it's not only on what's going on, most importantly, the use of Signal is for prayer requests. And when you know the need of people, then you can specifically pray for those people. But a lot of times we stay in the dark because we're not connected through ways of communication, and Signal is just a way that we did that. I'm going to... So the guy that's over that just spoke. Did you hear that thundering voice? Look to the back of the room, the long wild hair. John the Baptist has spoken. He's probably got honey dripping from his beard, bits of grasshopper. Month and day. You don't have to put the year, but all right. So thank you, John. Hey, obviously, there's a lot of needs in this fellowship, but at the same time, we've got a lot of great people, and I think that one thing that kind of sets us, not necessarily apart, but what sets us up is our love for one another. And I do think that it is true. It is true love. I don't think that it's just, I'm just doing this out of some religious obligation. And we probably drop the ball on a regular basis. If I missed your birthday, I'll probably miss it again next year. Anniversaries, but if you really need something, let me know. Let me know. Don't get mad at us if you don't communicate that you have a need, because sometimes we miss things. So I think that's where grace is also needed on behalf of not only leadership, but the people. And if somebody in the church tells you something and it needs to be communicated to deacons or elders, then don't drop the ball. Communicate, because we definitely don't want to miss the passing of someone's loved one. We don't want to miss, a major surgery that's going on, some of the needs in the church. So make sure that we're doing a good job of communicating on a regular basis. Communication is key. You'll find that in marriage and relationships with your kids. You'll find that in business, and you'll also find that in church. So I've been kind of preparing for Tuesday, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. I really trust the sovereignty of God, and when you talk about the word sovereignty, it means that He is the supreme ruler. Sovereign means supreme ruler, and God is the supreme ruler. So with that being said, you start to look at different stories and different things. This has nothing to do with church, but I started to study the American bison or buffalo. And very interesting, if you study the American bison, they are one of the only animals that's been documented when a huge storm is coming, they run directly into the storm. Cows and all the other ones, they'll run away from it, but a bison will run headlong into the storm, because it inherently knows that shortens the amount of time that the storm is going to affect it. And I thought, only if you have Jesus would you do that. So we should be Christian buffaloes. So if we come up with a mascot, we need to be the bison. Because if you have Jesus, it says, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. It doesn't say I can do all things with or without Jesus. It says I can do all things with Jesus. So as the buffalo, sometimes you just got to run headlong into a storm if you want to shorten the amount of storm. You think about Jesus, calming the storm, and He's asleep. I mean, obviously He's not afraid. I mean, if you look at Colossians 1:16, He created all things. All things were created by Him and through Him. Things that were seen and unseen. That means angels were created by Him. That means that the things that you can't see in the heavenly places were created by Him. That means lightning bolts were created by Him. That means clouds, thunder, the moon, the stars, the sun. So why in the world would He be afraid? Why in the world would He be afraid? Unlike Jesus, if there's a storm, a lot of times I'm probably not going to be asleep in the hull of a boat. I'm going to be like those sailors that were seasoned fishermen that had been on the sea a lot, and they had run into squalls on a regular basis. And they're screaming, "Save us! Save us!" And who did they wake up? But know this, He never sleeps again. After His resurrection, He never sleeps. After His resurrection, He's always awake. He's always there. You may not recognize His presence in every circumstance that you're going through. Nonetheless, He is always there. Always. He says He will never leave you nor forsake you. And I want to look at an Old Testament story, but it's going to require quite a bit of reading. So you're going to have to, if you don't mind, is it okay if I read Scripture? I'm going to read a lot of it. I'm going to Daniel. And I'm going to read the first 3 chapters of Daniel. And you're thinking, oh my Lord. I read pretty fast. I'm going to stop at a couple points. Daniel chapter 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the vessels of the house of God. That means that he probably would have taken goblets and plates, maybe some of the candelabras that were in there, or some of the menorahs. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace and to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate and of the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah. And the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar. Hananiah he called Shadrach. Mishael he called Meshach. And Azariah he called Abednego. Did you know that they had names before they were given these new names? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And when they took them out of their country and they moved them into the area of the Chaldeans, they gave them new names. They taught them all this new stuff. They were trying to indoctrinate them with their world. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who assigned your food and your drink, for why should he see that you are in worse condition than the youths who are of your own age? So you would endanger my head with the king. He's basically saying, if you don't eat the food of the kings, you're going to get skinny and emaciated. You're not going to look as healthy as some of the other young men, and he is going to lop my head off because I'm not taking good care of you. Then Daniel said to the steward whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink, then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you, and deal with your servants according to what you see. So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh than all the youths who ate the king's food. That doesn't make sense. If you ate nothing but vegetables and drank water for the next 10 days, you would be skinnier. This is a supernatural occurrence. This is a supernatural occurrence. This is a miracle of God. As for these 4 youths, I'm in verse 17, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. At the end of the time when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king spoke with them, and among all of them none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they stood before the king, and in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters that were in all his kingdom. And Daniel was there until the first year of King Cyrus. Historians believe the reason that the Magi, or the wise men, 3 wise men, it does not say there are 3. They brought 3 gifts, frankincense, gold, and myrrh, so people automatically think there were 3, but it never tells you were 3. It says they brought 3 different kinds of gifts. The reason that those Magi probably knew that that star was going to appear when it did is because Daniel was head of all of these people in the east. In the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. This is very interesting. It's very, very important for you to understand this. In the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was troubled and his sleep left him. When me and April were talking yesterday, I said, this guy was troubled and his sleep left him. And she says, I know what that feels like. Is there any women in here who have problems sleeping? I do think that women have bigger problems sleeping than men. I know me. If I sit still for longer than 41 seconds, I don't snore, do I? I talk a lot in my sleep. Do I snore? That's a lie. I talk a lot. Then the king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. There's other words for these things. The sorcerers, otherwise known as astrologers, same word. I would tell you, don't fool around with astrology. Don't fool around with astrology. Because it's strictly forbidden in Scripture. It's strictly forbidden in Scripture. Don't fool around with it. He says, stay away from soothsayers and necromancers. It is clear in Scripture. You don't mess with that. That's what these people are. That's what these people are. They're summoning evil spirits to give them interpretations of dreams. It's the same thing that Moses faced when he went in before Pharaoh and he had his staff. And he threw it down and it turned into a snake. And Pharaoh said, you magicians of mine, do the same thing. And they turned their staffs into snakes. Do you know what Moses' snake did? He ate their snakes, proving that Moses' God was more powerful than their gods. This is the God you serve. The God of all other gods. He is the big G. Every other God starts with a little g. You worship the big G because of JC. You've been given the gift of faith to have the Holy Spirit live within inside of you. The same Spirit that rose Jesus Christ from the dead is the same Spirit that is inside of you based on the gift of faith that God the Father chose you to have. So they came in and stood before the king. And the king said to them, I had a dream and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, The word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. But if you show the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and its interpretation. I'm going to read to you something. Nebuchadnezzar could not know for certain that the wise men gave a correct interpretation of the dream, but he could test their ability to tell what he dreamed. If he told them the dream, how would he know whether their interpretation was correct or not? So what he asked of them, tell me what I dreamed and give me the interpretation. Despite their protests, Nebuchadnezzar did not ask too much of these magicians, these astrologers, these sorcerers, and these Chaldeans. These men made their living on their supposed ability to contact the gods and gain secrets from the spirit realm. If they were really what they claimed to be, they should be able to tell Nebuchadnezzar both the dream and its interpretation. Interesting. It is very interesting. And as you see what the dream is, you'll find it even more interesting. 7 of chapter 2. They answered a second time and said, Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show its interpretation. The king answered and said, I know with certainty that you are trying to gain time, because you see that the word from me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me its interpretation. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, There is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand, for no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. Because of this, king was angry and very furious and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. Now, who is part of the wise men of Babylon at this point? Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They're about to be killed. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Then Daniel replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He declared to Arioch, the king's captain, Why is the decree of the king so urgent? The Arioch made the matter known to Daniel, and Daniel went in and requested the king to appoint him a time that he might show the interpretation to the king. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel. When was the battle won? Right here. The battle was won when Daniel prayed with his friends. You must understand the importance of praying in unity for a thing. You must pray in unity as a body that calls themselves the body of Christ. You're praying for the will of God in unity. Praying friends are a blessing. There's a lady over here that's not here today that has 3 kidneys. do you realize that in this fellowship, and I'm not giving you the credit, I'm giving God all the glory. We have had 2 kidney transplants in 2023 in this small little fellowship. Maybe we need to start praying for people's kidneys. Or maybe we just need to start praying more. I know I do. I know I do. So, in verse 24, now let's go back up to God reveals. We're going to be in verse 17. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah's companions, and told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. That kind of sounds like a dream. A vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the king's matter. Therefore Daniel went into Arioch when the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went in and said thus to him, Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered the king and said, No wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed are these. To you, O king, as you lay in bed, came thoughts of what would be after this. And he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living, but in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your mind. You saw, he gives him the dream. He's about to give him the dream. You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. This image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold all together were broken in pieces and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away. Does everybody know what chaff is? So when they were thrashing wheat, what they would do, they would take a pitchfork, and they would put their pitchfork in the freshly harvested wheat, and they would throw it in the air, and the loose stuff that was useless was called chaff, and it would blow away, and the meat of the wheat kernels would fall to the floor, and that's what would be used. And the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. He just told him the dream, and it can only be a God that gives him the dream. You, O king, the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power and the might and the glory, and into whose hand he has given wherever they dwell the children of man, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens make you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. He is telling Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. Another kingdom, inferior to you, shall rise after you, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these. And as you saw the feet and the toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom. But some of the firmness of iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with the soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, a great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain and its interpretation sure. Nebuchadnezzar was the gold head. Can anybody tell me what the next part was? It was silver, correct? This was the kingdom of the Medo-Persians. It was the next kingdom that they're describing. Can anybody tell me what the next piece is? Bronze. Can anybody tell me who's bronze? Alexander the Great was bronze. He was the next kingdom. Can anybody tell me the next kingdom? It was the Romans. The Romans were known as the Iron Fist. It was the Romans. The next one is the clay mixed with the iron. And these are the 10 kings that will be set up in the end time. It is the last of the prophecies to be filled of this dream. It has not yet happened. But the great stone that was not cut with human hands, did not have an earthly father, is the great rock that is going to fly into those feet and destroy those 10 kings. Jesus Christ is the stone that was not created by human hands. And you can fall on him now, or you can be crushed by him later. That's really the verdict. You can fall on Jesus now while you still have a chance, or you can be crushed by him when he returns. It's as simple as that. That's part of the gospel. That's part of the gospel. He's a returning king. Those 10 kings that are going to be set up, a lot of people think that's the reuniting of the Holy Roman Empire. Maybe. I just know there's going to be 10 kings and they're going to be crushed by the king. So, in verse 46, what time is it? I'm in verse 46. I think the ending of chapter 3 is really what I'm here for. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face, and he paid homage to Daniel, and commanded that an offering and incense be offered up to him. The king answered and said to Daniel, "Truly your God is God of gods and Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery." Then the king gave Daniel high honors and many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Could you see how wise men from the east, could you see how wise men from the east, 600 years later, maybe could have learned something from Daniel being head over all of the magicians and sorcerers and eunuchs of the east? That they would know where a star would appear. They would know they're going to Bethlehem. They would know the reason that that star was there. It was pointing them to the one true king that was probably the stone that wasn't cut by human hands that was going to destroy the feet. Why'd they show up with gold, frankincense, and myrrh? Why'd they show up with gold? They showed up with gold because he was a king. They showed up with frankincense because he was a priest. That is the incense that you burn within the temple. They showed up with myrrh because that's what you embalm dead people with. And they knew that he was going to die. Somebody told them to bring those three gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Verse 48, then the king gave Daniel high honors and many great gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel made a request of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel remained at the king's court. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold. Listen to what he does. Listen to what he does. He just got a dream, and he got it interpreted for him, and he wants to thwart the purposes of God. Remember, he's the head of gold. He's the head of gold. Made an image of gold, the entire image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth 6 cubits. He set it upon the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent to gather the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the province to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they herald proclaimed aloud, "You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up." Interesting. Interesting. Sounds a lot like what the Antichrist is going to do. Sounds a lot like what the he's giving you a snapshot into what the Antichrist is going to do. He's giving you a type and shadow. The Holy Spirit has revealed through his revealed will, called the Bible, what to prepare yourself for. You're going to have to make a choice whether you're going to worship the Antichrist or not. And everybody says, well, when I get put to a test that's that big, I'll stand up. You practice with the little tests. You practice with the little tests. It's a lot easier to flip a dime out of $1 than it is 10,000 out of 100,000, I promise you. You start with the little tests. The little tests of faith. And then, if you've practiced in the little tests of faith, you may be put through a big trial of faith. And because he was faithful to your obedience in the little tests of faith, you're able to stand in the bigger trials of faith. And I've met with them. They're standing strong. They're standing strong. Broken, but still standing. Broken, but still standing. This is a time that we come together and unify as a body of believers, and we all pray in unity that God would continue to sustain them. There's not very many of you in here that has ever suffered the loss of a child, and that is I can't think of a greater. Some of you have suffered it, and you understand that pain. Job said when his children died and he lost everything, he said, "What I had feared the most has come upon me." April can't even talk about it. I can't even look at Ronnie. Your problems are small. What you're fighting about inside your homes is small. You need your perspective shifted. You know who you are. I know who I am. Verse 7, chapter 3. Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Nebuchadnezzar's grand idolatry was accompanied by music. Anybody find that interesting? Elaborate and well-produced music. I find that interesting. Sometimes Lucifer is known sometimes, and I could make a case for it. I can't prove it definitively scripturally. Some people think that he was heaven's choir master. In his description in Ezekiel, he kind of sounds like he had some pipes. The power of music today. The power of music. Listen to it for just a little while, and you'll be indoctrinated by its sweet poison. I'm preaching to the crowd. I love gangster rap. I feel convicted when I listen to it, sometimes. I love 107.3. Let me tell you how I got through the death of my brother, my mom, and my dad. It was God, but you know what I lent into first? Not my wife. I got bottles and bottles and bottles and bottles of alcohol and old country. And I cried because alcohol is a natural depressant. It made me more depressed. And I listened to old country because that'll make you depressed. And you know what? It didn't help me. It didn't help me. Not until I reached out to Jesus, like Peter, sinking after walking on the water. He was always there to lift me up. But you got to reach out your hand. You got to reach for Him in those times. Reach for Him. It says, seek ye first. Call on Him. He is always there. Therefore, at the time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning fiery furnace. We all know this story. We all know this story. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon. This sounds like politics. They do not like the fact that these Jews have been elevated to the highest in the land, and they want them to be killed. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, I think it is interesting that he did not just go on hearsay. I think it's a good point to pick up about Nebuchadnezzar. He did not go on hearsay, just what these people said. He said, bring them to me, and I'm going to ask them myself. Imagine the great amount of pressure. Imagine the great amount of pressure that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are feeling. They're right before the king, the one who has made a decree that if anybody does not do this, I'm going to throw them into the fiery furnace. and he brings them in right before them. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music to fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace, and who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" This is the best part. This is the best part. God is about to glorify himself. God is about to glorify himself. But it's what they say which makes it so much more glorious. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And he will deliver us out of your hand, O king." The next answer, "But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." If he doesn't save us, we still ain't serving. If he doesn't save us, if he doesn't rescue us, we still ain't serving no other gods. You're going to have to make some choices. Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I can kind of see him as a fatherly figure because he says, "Oh, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego." You kind of see him as a father figure, and he's like, "Guys, just do this just once so I don't have to kill you. Do this just this one time. Compromise on this, and I won't throw you into the fiery furnace. Look, I've set you up over all this stuff, but I'm going to kill you." And when they said they weren't going to do it, it says he was filled with fury, and the expression of his face was changed. I don't know what that looked like. What did it look like? How scary was it? Ashton, what do you think it looked like? You think it was scary? Probably. I wonder if he had sharp golden teeth or something. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. Hot. And he ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, and their other garments, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. Because the king's order was urgent and the furnace overheated, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" I love it. I love it. Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? They answered and said to the king, "True, O king." He answered and said, "But I see 4 men unbound." The only thing that burned up were the ropes that were holding them bound. And there were not 3 in the fire anymore. There were 4. He's with you. You are His children. He will not abandon you. He will never abandon you. But I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods, or some versions say is like the Son of God. Who do you think's in there with them? Some people think it's just an angel. I lean toward Jesus. I can make a case. I can make a case. I lean toward Jesus. The pre-incarnate Jesus. I lean toward Jesus being in there with them. Because he describes him like a son of God. Or like the Son of God. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning fiery furnace. He declared, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire, and the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw the fire had not any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed, their cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come upon them. They did not even smell like smoke, but their ropes were burned off. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him and set aside the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree, any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb and their houses laid in ruins, for there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. It's interesting. He's using your experience to glorify himself so people will turn to him. He's using your little bitty trials and your greatest trials as an opportunity for people to see God glorified. I don't always know how to explain it. I have no idea. But all things work together for good for those who love God. All things work together for good for those who love God. And that may sound cold and that may sound calloused when somebody's going through something horrible, but it's the truth. And the truth will set you free. The truth will burn your ropes. You do not have to walk around on this planet bound. You can be unbound by whatever it is you struggle with, but you have to cry out to Jesus. You must. You must. So, with that being said, I'm going to read you something just real quick. God is a master at working all things together for good. A promise for all who truly love God. Truly love God. God's plan for us is not, I'm going to get some tomatoes thrown at me on this one. That's okay. God's plan for us is not health, wealth, happiness, though we may receive these blessings as a blessing from God. His desire for us is to be conformed to the image of His Son. That is His ultimate goal in everything. His ultimate goal in everything for your life is for you to be conformed to the image of His Son. If health is one of the blessings that does that, great. But if it's not, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, if He saves us, great. We're not serving your God. If He doesn't, great. We're not serving your God. John chapter 2, or 1 John chapter 2, verse 15. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. I have a hard time grappling with things like that sometimes because I know that the love of the Father is in me, but I am still very attached to this world. I put cologne on. I got this new suit coat from my friends. So I'm going to tell you who I got this coat from. So Brother Billy, for a long time, would prance around in here in his little green coat It was a big green coat because he was much bigger than I am. Just want to let that be known. He had this green coat that William and Belva had bought him when he was preaching in Mena. He'd wear that thing. He'd always say, William and Belva bought me this coat. William and Belva bought me this coat. Well, I'd been a pastor for like 10 years. I'm thinking in my mind, I know what he's doing. They ain't never bought me no coat. They love him more than they love me. You know what they did for me on Christmas? They bought me a coat. Guys, I have finally arrived. The sermons just get better from here now that I got the coat. I know it's getting late. Can I read you one last thing? It's Luke chapter 16. I'm just going to read it from this ERV. I know Pierce hates that, but I don't care. Jesus said to his followers, once there was a rich man. He hired a manager to take care of his business. Later he learned that his manager was cheating him. So he called the manager in and said to him, I have heard bad things about you. Give me a report of what you have done with my money. You can't be my manager anymore. So the manager thought to himself, what will I do? My master is taking my job away from me. I'm not strong enough to dig ditches. I'm too proud to beg. I know what I will do. I will do something to make friends so that when I lose my job, they will welcome me into their homes. So the manager called in each person who owed the master some money. He asked the first one, how much do you owe my master? He answered, I owe him 100 jars of olive oil. The manager said to him, here's your bill. Hurry, sit down and make the bill less. Write 50 jars. Then the manager asked another one, how much do you owe my master? He answered, I owe him 100 measures of wheat. Then the manager said to him, here's your bill. You can make it less. Write 80 measures. Later the master told the dishonest manager that he had done a smart thing. Seems weird, doesn't it? Yes, worldly people are smarter in their business with each other than spiritual people are. Oh. I tell you, use the worldly things you have now to make friends for later. Then when those things are gone, you will be welcomed into a home that lasts forever. Whoever can be trusted with small things can also be trusted with big things. Whoever is dishonest in little things will be dishonest in big things too. If you cannot be trusted with worldly riches, you will not be trusted with true riches. And if you cannot be trusted with the things that belong to someone else, you will not be given anything of your own. This challenges me. I have not been a good steward of my finances, as good as I can be. I'm being honest. And if you don't like honesty, I don't know what you like. Jesus says clearly, if he can't trust you with your money, he cannot trust you with the bigger things. Guys, it is a test. It's a test. I'm starting to grasp it. But, me and April, we make financial stupids. We make financial stupids. Financial ignorance. But if he can't trust you with the little things, how's he going to trust you with the big things? And the reason I bring this up, they would not eat that food that was set before them. They didn't compromise on the little things. And those victories that they won in not compromising in those little things gave them the faith and the courage to stand up in the midst of their greatest challenge. They said, I'm not bowing before that golden statue. I serve God and God alone. You're going to have to make some decisions. We all know it. I pray that you have an increased measure of faith through us reading probably more Scripture than you've read in a long time. We went through 3 chapters of the Old Testament together. That was probably more scripture that you've read, some of you, the entire 2023. And that should not be a slap in the face. That should be, this is your chance. Tomorrow is when you can start new goals. Tomorrow is 2024. There's bad things going to happen in 2024. I promise you. There's great things that are going to happen in 2024. But let your number one goal seek God. Let your number one goal be God. For a long time, for me, it was money. I sought money at all costs. I'm just glad she didn't divorce me while I was out chasing money. I wasn't chasing tail. I was not chasing tail. I was chasing green. I promise you. And for a period of time, we accumulated a bunch of it. Keep God first. Let 2024 be the year that you make a change to put God first in your life. Maybe you've never done that before. 2024 will be a good year for that. I promise you. Because those 10 kings that make up the 10 toes that are iron mixed with clay, they're coming. They're coming. If you do not look at prophecy and you do not look at what's happening around the world, I promise you, boys and girls, those 10 kings are about to come on the scene. The stage is set. The stage is set. I ain't saying it's going to happen in 2024, but it's probably if you live a full life, it's more than likely going to happen in your life. I can't prophesy that and say that to be true because that would make me a false prophet if it don't. But the stage is set. You better know Jesus. You better know Jesus. John Speck, you pray pretty prayers.